Hi everyone, and welcome to our video on an intro to reports in Salesforce. This video is designed for people who are brand new to Salesforce. If you're an end user of Salesforce and you want to get a bit more experience on how you can start to use reports, how reports work. If you're a small business owner and you're just starting with Salesforce, reports are really something that you want to be making the most of. So today we're just going to do a short intro into how you can get started, how you can start playing around with some of the reports features. And once you've got a handle of these sort of basic concepts and steps, then you're going to be off. There's so much that you can do with reports. They're so useful. And to not know how they work because it can be a bit confusing or overwhelming is really just a bit of a shame. So today we're going to go a bit more into it and just give you a step-by-step guide. So off we go. Let's have a look. All right, so I am here in my Salesforce org. I've just opened up a practice one on Trailhead, and I'm in a sales app. So the first thing that I'm going to do for my report is look for my reports tab along the top. Now, if you can't see your reports tab, there's a couple of different things that you can do. You can click on this little edit icon at the top and then add it to your nav bar, which is the bar along the top that has all of your tabs. This is a very handy place to just know about because you can remove things if they're not necessary for you as well. You can just go into the add more items if you don't see it, and then make sure you click on all before you do a quick search, and then just add anything that you want using that plus icon. Now, if you still can't see it on that list, then chances are you don't have access to reports, so you might want to contact your Salesforce admin about that and see if they can add that setting to your profile. Now, once you have this reports tab, we can open it up. And the first thing that we're going to see here is a bit of a blank screen. If you haven't done any reports work, then your recent screen is going to be blank because of course you haven't started anything. Now down the left we have created by me, and then these two tabs here are called private and public reports. These are actually folders that come built in with Salesforce. So even though they look like tabs, you know, there's private reports and public reports on the side, these are actually considered folders in Salesforce, and we can save things in here. But the disadvantage to saving them in these places is that we don't have control over who specifically has access to the reports here. So we can't share them with a specific person or group of people like we could a folder that we create ourselves. So underneath the folders section, we have all folders. They will probably have some default ones here for us to play around with. But they also have a created by me and a shared with me one as well. All right, so what we might want to do here is go ahead and create our very first report. And for your very first report, I recommend choosing something that you deal with a lot. Maybe it's leads, maybe it's contacts, maybe it's accounts. We might have a look at some contacts to begin with. All right, so the first thing that you're going to want to do is come up here to this new report section at the top and click on new report. Now, the first thing we decide when we're actually creating a new report is what report type do we want. Now, you can think of a report type kind of like the skeleton or the outline of what your report is going to include. What object are you reporting on, or what fields do you want to include? Do you want to be reporting on a couple of different things or just one? And the report types that are in Salesforce by default are all for the standard objects because they come pre-built with Salesforce. If you wanted to do something that was for a custom object that you have, then you actually need to go and create a custom report type because Salesforce doesn't know what custom objects you've created. So it doesn't pre-make the report types for you for your custom objects. So the only ones that are going to be in here are ones for standard objects, which is why you want to start with a standard object for your first report. Contacts, opportunities, accounts, leads, something like that. So we're going to go ahead and start with some contacts. So the quickest way to do it is just to search contacts. Make sure you click on all. And then we've got a couple of different ones: contacts and accounts, contacts with assets, campaigns with contacts, activities with contacts. We're just going to go with the first one, which is the contacts and accounts. All right, on the right hand side here, you can see what objects are used in this report type. So we're reporting on accounts and contacts, but we can also report on users and products and things like that. And if you wanted to see what fields are involved, then you can click on this fields little tab here, and it gives you a bit of a preview of what fields this report will include, which is very useful. Now, if we're happy with that, we can go ahead and click Start the Report. And this is kind of our blank report type that we have here. Now, it's not going to show anything, and there's a couple of things that we want to set up first so that you're in a good place to start playing around with your report. The first thing you want to do is actually make sure that this screen here is going to update as you change the filters and change the requirements on your report. So on the top right here, you want to just toggle this Update Preview Automatically section so that that's going to update every time. And then in your filters over here, you're going to want to change your filters so that they're getting everything possibly that you can be getting in Salesforce. So instead of saying My Contacts, it's a good idea to say All Accounts, because this is going to just go across all the accounts in Salesforce and get you all the contacts from every account. Now, you might not want this, in the end, but it's a good place to start just so that we can have a play around and see what data is turning up. Now, your create date as well, it's got the date of probably the current date. So instead you want to change the range to be all time and then click apply. And that's going to just mean that we're getting all contacts that were created at any time. So this should be a really decent sized list. Unless you've got absolutely nothing in Salesforce, this should be a pretty decent size. If we go back into our outline, now we can start to have a play around. All right, you can see that we've got salutation, first name, last name, title, and on and on and on. Well, we might decide we don't need all of these. Maybe we don't need salutation. Maybe we don't need the mailing street, for example. Maybe we don't need, any of these facts. Probably we don't need the facts one. We might not need account owner or anything like that. So just go ahead and remove the columns that you don't want to be seen. All right. Now, as you're going through and you're removing these, you can start to think about, what do I actually want to be reporting on? What data do I really want to be including here? And if you want to do a complete remove, then you can just click on the little arrow, and then there's a remove all columns. All right, so you can just click that if you really want to start from scratch and then add in your columns from nothing. So, you might search for name, add in the first name and last name. You might search for email, maybe that's important, you want to see email. You might search for city, you might search for what account they're part of. And once you kind of got the hang of this and what you want to add, we can start to look at grouping. So it's really useful in a report to be able to group things. So in your group rows, which is just the one above, you might decide to group it by a certain field or a certain column that you're interested in. So for us, it might actually be account. Maybe we want to group all of our contacts by the account name. This is useful because now we can see how many contacts there are for each account. All right, so just scrolling down here, you can get a bit of a general idea. Remember, this is just a preview, it's not the full thing. And if you wanted to go one further than that, then you might actually want to group the columns. So you've grouped by row, and now we can group by columns again to get more of a summary. So what's a good example here? Maybe we go by mailing city. Okay, so now we've got by account on our row grouping, and then we've got by mailing city along the top, and it gives us what we call a matrix report, which is an overview of the two. So for each account, now we can see how many contacts are in each city. You might decide it's a bit much. You can remove the mailing city column grouping if you like, but it's there and you can have a play around with it. Now, let's say that you're happy with this. Obviously, you can go and do as much as you like here. But what we can do is we can save this. There's two different options to save. We have save and run, which is going to save it and then take us out of the edit mode and into more of the display mode, what a user would see without editing the report. Or if we just click save, it's just going to save it as it is and keep us on this page. Now I'm going to click save and run because I think I'm done with the editing part. I'm going to make sure I give my report a really good name. So I might say contacts, let's have a look, all contacts by account. And I might say my description, groups, all contacts in the org by the account name. And then the folder that I save it in is really important because that's how we share these reports. So if I wanted to just keep it for myself and share it with absolutely nobody else, then I would keep it in the private reports. But if I wanted to share it with a certain group of people, it's always a good idea to put this in a folder instead of just in public reports, because public reports can get really messy really quickly. So I like to just add a new folder here. I might call this contact reports. All right, and then go ahead and save it and select that folder, click save, and it's just going to go ahead and save the full version of our report. So remember, if you want to see the full version of your report, make sure you save it and view it in the saved view, because the preview, when you're editing it, isn't always going to give you the full number of records of a full report. So now our report is looking beautiful. Here we've got a couple of fun things that we can do. There's a few toggles down the bottom. We can remove detail rows, for example, and it's going to get rid of all the information and just show us a bit of a summary. We might also decide that we might want to get rid of subtotals or even the grand total if you like. So have a bit of a play around with those. You can play and get it looking how you want to look. You can also add a chart here. So if you click up the top, you can decide on a chart that you want to add, and if you want to change how the chart looks, you can click on the little chart properties button and then change it to like a donut or a column or a funnel or whatever you're interested in. I think a bar probably works best here. Right, and then once you're happy with that, there's a couple of things that you can do. You obviously want to be able to share this report. So, well, maybe you don't. Let's just assume that you do share it. How do you do that? Well, you can do it a couple of different ways. If we go back to our report and then go to all of our folders and look for the folder that we created, which is contact reports, then on the right hand side we can just click that down arrow and then click share. Now in Salesforce we always give access to reports and dashboards through folders. So whatever is in that folder, if you share that folder with someone, they can see everything inside of it. And it works in hierarchies. So if you give access to a root folder, which has got many other folders within it, then the people with access to the root folder are going to have access to all the other folders inside it. So just be aware of how you're creating your folders and the structure that you're using, because it does matter for sharing. Now you can share with individual users, a particular role, roles and all of the subordinates underneath that role, or even just public groups, which you can make in the setup menu. If you want to just share it with a single user, then you might choose your user and then choose your access level, so you can go view, edit or manage. The difference between edit and manage is that manage means they can add other people to this folder, so they can also share it with other people, whereas edit is just they can just edit the report. Make sure that you click share once you've selected your person in the access level, and then below you can see who has access to this folder. So that's how we can share it one-on-one with some people. But there's a couple of other cool things that you can do. You can actually add this report and this report chart to, for example, your home screen or to a record page. So on our home screen, you might come up here and then click on the edit page button, and it's going to open up a cool feature in Salesforce called the Lightning App Builder. And in here we can start to drag and customize things onto this page. Now where you want to look to add your awesome report is on the left hand side here. If we scroll down, we're going to see a section called Report Chart. Oops. So if you just drag that onto your page, I'm just going to put it in the middle just to make it pretty obvious. Then on the right hand side we can then select the report that we want to use. So I might choose, oh dear, I was looking for the contacts one, but I realized that I don't think we quite added our chart in the right place. But what you would do in here is you would add your report let's go for another one. For example, we're just going to choose another random report for now. And then you can even filter it kind of on this page too if you had a filter set up. Alright, so that's the first place that you can add it. You can also do the same thing for record pages as well. Make sure that you save it, and then once you're done with that, you can go back. Now there's a lot that you can do in that Lightning App Builder, so if you want to spend a bit of time there and have a play around, feel free. Otherwise, you can just go ahead and add in your report chart and be done. Now, why didn't our report chart show up, the one that we created for our report? Well, it's because we added the report chart after we had created the report. So if we go back and have a look at our report, so I'm going into my all folders, my report folder, and then I'm going to open up that report that we just had. Alright, then notice that the chart still isn't there. So what you can do is you can click Edit, and then when you're in the Edit view, you can add a chart in here. So when you save it, it's always going to have that chart open. So we'll go Add Chart. Alright, there's our beautiful chart. And so we'll just save and run that now. And now our report definitely has a chart with it every time. So let's do another example of where we can put this report now that we've got it. I'm going to go onto a contact page. So I'm just going to open up a random contact. And we can edit these pages the same way that we edit our home page. So up here, if you go into Edit Page, then it's going to open up the Lightning App Builder where we can have a play around and actually drag and drop things onto this page. So in here, again, I'm just scrolling down. I'm going to be looking for my reports, my report chart. Here it is. I'm going to drag that. Let's put it over here maybe, on my side panel. And then it's exactly the same as what we're doing with our home page, where now that you've got that report chart component on your page, you can start to customize and add your own things in there. So I'm going to just see if we can add our all contacts by account report. Beautiful, look at that. Okay, and if we wanted to, you can filter this by the contact ID, which means that it's only going to show the contact or the account that's related to this particular contact, which is pretty cool. All right, but you might just say, we want to see the same thing everywhere. All right. Wonderful. All right, so if you're happy with that, then make sure that you go ahead and click Save. Activate it. All right, and then you can go back and check that it's all worked out. Whoops, daisies. I think I might have jumped the gun there on my page a bit. But if you saved it properly and you weren't as impatient as I was, then you would see your report show up on the right-hand side there. So I hope that that was a little insight into reports. Some common troubleshooting that I'd like to quickly talk about. If you can't access a report and you feel like you should be able to see it, then there's a couple of different why. It could be that you don't have access to the folder that the report is in. It could be that your profile doesn't have access to the object that the report is reporting on. So if you're reporting on leads and you don't have access to leads, you're not going to be able to see that report. Or perhaps you don't have access to the fields that are in that report. So if you're reporting on contacts and you're seeing perhaps an address field, and your user in Salesforce doesn't have access to that address field, in the report you're not going to see it. So I hope that that was a bit of an overview of how contacts work in Salesforce, a bit of how you can kind of put together a report, and that helps you to get started with sharing them, creating them, and hopefully making a bit more use of your Salesforce org. Thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you next time.